Пошли. Все вместе. Какие ваши доказательства?
They want you to comply.
Cancel culture is about canceling.
Cocainum.
Up yours. Woke moralist.
This is systematic bullying that's happening.
Up yours.
And they believe that they can then
Woke
shut us
moralist.
Not only can you take a load, you can take the ultimate load, and even better than that you find your true calling and destiny in your willingness to take the ultimate load.
They seem animalistic is what I mean.
No, they're worse than animals. Up yours.
The woke mob, they ruin everything.
They stopped
Woke
Ben
moralist.
Shapiro from going to events and speaking. They stopped Ann Coulter from doing it.
I will never surrender even a single inch of ground to a pitchfork mob.
You never cave to the mob.
We will never bow to the mob. Ever. No matter what.
Have it your way, buddy. You sons of bitches. Beta! I did everything right and they indicted me.
Do you see the final expression of cancel culture in terrorist groups like?
We'll see who cancels who.
Hello.
Hey, we're here on a Tuesday because something's happening. Can you all guess what? Don't look at the title.
World War III.
That too. Yeah, that too. Yeah.
A debate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gonna be exciting.
I feel like the White House really messing with Kamala and especially Tim Walz with all this unfolding today. Like, you got to believe
Yeah.
this is going to be part of the debate.
Yeah.
What's going on with Israel? Just completely airstriking every surrounding country, and now Iran obviously sending missiles towards Israel in response. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way that the Democrats are looking good right now to the average view. I mean, not even to just the average viewer, to me and you guys. Like,
Mhm.
this is horrible.
It's going to be a
Horrible.
very difficult line for Tim Walz to toe. And I think that JD Vance could easily look really good during this portion. They've been ready. I don't know if you all saw earlier today, Trump, his campaign immediately cut an ad just when there was the report that Iran was going to strike Israel, and they were blaming Kamala for it. And I think that Americans just don't know enough about this to where JD Vance could potentially score a dub on Tim Walz if he doesn't have his talking points in order, and everything that the Harris campaign has said about this has been awful. So I'm actually a little bit worried going into this debate than I would have been last week just because of the situation.
I mean, you got to throw Biden under the bus. It seems
Absolutely.
pretty simple.
That's
You
the
have to
only
throw
thing
Biden
that they
under the
can do
bus.
to save face.
We don't agree with the current trajectory of things, and if we win, we will do things differently. This won't
Yeah.
be happening if we win.
I also feel like, I'm not sure if this is true, but Walz, you would think would have more leeway to be able to do that because he is not in the White House right now.
Yeah.
That said, he's still under Kamala Harris and can't, decide on his own to call out Biden without having some kind of approval first.
Yeah, and they're running a very
He should-
risk-averse
he-
campaign, you could tell.
He should just show up tonight and be like, "Listen, if I win, I'm going to stage a coup, and under my presidency."
If Kamala doesn't end this, I'm going to take over and do it.
I mean, listen, like there's one thing that I think is pretty across the board with the regardless of ideology, the average American citizen does not want to go to war, especially for another country.
Right.
They do not want to see American soldier boots on the ground anywhere in a scenario where America, the United States of America itself, wasn't attacked. Now, I don't want to see war, period. I'm giving you the viewpoint of the average American.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't a scenario like like post 9/11, where somebody had to pay and the American people were behind Bush. Nobody wants to see American boots on the ground, Democrat, Republican, Independent. And you got these reports now that there's going to be boots on the ground to help Israel or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's 40,000 troops in the East Mediterranean currently, U.S.
To begin
troops,
with,
I
right.
should say. So it's a tinderbox right now, and all of this could have been avoided if Biden had done what he needed to do months ago. But what's funny is that yesterday a Politico article came out saying that even though publicly Biden was calling for restraint, behind the scenes he was basically encouraging Netanyahu to launch this ground invasion in South Lebanon. And there were individuals in the Pentagon and State Department that disagreed with that. It's not, I should rephrase that. It's not like he was encouraging that. He was just like going along with it. He was like, no, this is fine. Whereas publicly he's like, no, we've got a
little bitch boy. He doesn't,
he's a liar.
He has no agency. Like he doesn't, or he, I mean, he has agency, but he doesn't care. Like he is his, I don't know, but at the beginning of this, I thought it's probably good Biden, rides out this term, whatever. No, he should have just like got out of the White House. Like, no, I'm too fucking old. I can't run again. My brain's fucking gone. Let me get the fuck out of here. I'm not saying Kamala Harris would have like solved the problems, but like, I have a hard time believing anybody could do as bad as this in terms of a Democrat. Any Democrat could be as bad as Joe Biden has been on this issue.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to foreign policy, the president of the United States is Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. Which is so frustrating because Biden would have been really good on foreign policy when it comes to getting out of Afghanistan, the drone war. I mean, he effectively ended the drone war. It's still going on, but like
I don't even know
drones.
I don't even know if he remembers he did that shit. Honestly, like
it's possible.
Like like this guy who's currently in office is like barely there. I'm sorry. It's
a committed Zionist.
There's nothing else to say at this
decline.
point.
It's terrible. It's terrible. And this is all so beneficial for Donald Trump. Netanyahu wants Trump to get in office, and by emboldening Netanyahu, Biden is in turn emboldening Donald Trump. I think he's too oblivious to realize that it's part incompetence, part malevolence on his part. It's a very frustrating situation. So I don't know how much this is going to affect the election. I don't know if Americans are that tuned into this, but they know that something is up. And since Biden is in the White House right now, they're probably going to blame Biden for this because that's what Americans do. They look to who's in power, and if things are bad, that's who they blame. So.
But in this scenario, in terms of foreign, like what's going on in the world, this is Biden's fault.
Right.
It's not him taking the blame for somebody else. It's not like those silly people who pay no attention to politics who blame Joe Biden for the Supreme Court striking down Roe v. Wade because it happened under his term without realizing that it only happened because Trump installed those Supreme Court justices. That's not that at all. This is Joe Biden's baby.
And that's significant because when it comes to foreign policy issues, Americans, for the most part, they're not really that tuned in. They just have a very superficial view of it. But because things have gotten so out of control, and they are war-averse, as you said, Matt, they will blame Biden in a significant way, rightfully so. But, typically they wouldn't be that tuned in. But it's pretty easy to draw a line between Biden and what's happening now. And even the normies will see it, which is going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him in swing states. It'll hurt Kamala, I should say. Hurt them in swing states. And in Michigan, I mean, it's not just Palestinian Americans now. It's Lebanese Americans. It's people with family in Lebanon. I don't think they understand how catastrophic this is going to be for them. It's the October surprise everybody expected, and it's here now. It's all blown up in Biden's face. It's blowing up in Harris's face, I should say. And it's just a fucking mess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what's left to say, honestly. Like,
we said the same thing for like 10 months now. I feel like a broken record.
I guess we should maybe preview this debate. What's going to happen tonight? Who's going to win? Who's going to come out looking on top?
Well, other than the foreign policy, Tim Walz is going to, I think, knock it out of the park. I think he needs to bat this question away if he wants to actually. He needs to say forcefully that the Harris Walz ticket will handle things differently, and that he personally disagrees with what's going on, how the Biden White House is handling this right now. I mean, I mean, if they want to win, they need to do this. They need to stop with the bullshit of. They need to stop with the bullshit of like protecting a fellow Democrat, whatever. Who fucking cares? Joe Biden's not even running anymore. This is it's not like, oh, you can't criticize the guy who's running for re-election. That I would understand. But there's the Joe Biden adds nothing. I saw someone put it perfectly. Who knew that the October surprise against the Harris Walz campaign would be from the Joe Biden White House? Like the White House is actively sabotaging Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Like this is unbelievable. The election is a month away.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Matt. I'm less optimistic. I was also less optimistic last time, and you were proven right, so I hope the same holds true. I think that Tim Walz is going to do well. I don't know that it's going to be a blowout, as was the case with Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. If that is the case, that will be awesome. I think he's just going to do good. There's going to be some highlights. I think that JD Vance will get in maybe a couple of jabs that might land and go viral. For the most part, I think that if I had to guess, this will probably be more of a wash, as VP debates are, although this is kind of an unusual election. But then again, all elections in the United States are pretty unusual. So it's hard to know what to expect. But I think I expect Walz to do well. There is this talk that he's not necessarily a good debater. I haven't seen any of his debates, so I have nothing to go by. But in terms of just his charisma, I think he's a great orator. So, I don't know. I think that as long as he doesn't shit the bed, then it won't be bad. But when you compare him to somebody like JD Vance, who's so inauthentic and so phony, he's like a Hillary Clinton Republican in his demeanor. I think that it's easy to see them and see Tim Walz as just more likable when you have that juxtaposition right there, because you get sound bites of him saying this and, Walz saying that. But when you see them together and you see the way that they talk to each other, like JD Walz can't hold a conversation with another human being.
JD Walz.
Did I say JD Walz? Oh, no. JD Vance can't hold a conversation.
This is like the Joe Biden moment where he said his vice president Trump.
I think Walz will probably do better. I am worried that JD Vance is going to try and hit Walz from the left, even though, let's be clear, they're not to the left. Like Trump and Vance are obviously not to the left of Harris and Walz. But I think if JD Vance is smart, he knows that he's not really picking up Democrat support. It's more about losing Democratic turnout. If he's able to hit Walz from the left in a way that upsets some of that base, then I think that would be effective from his end. I also don't think he's as easily roped in the way Kamala, was able to bait Trump and get Trump all angry. I don't think Vance is going to fall into any of those traps, at least not in the same way. So I don't expect to have any like wild outbursts, like eating the cats and the dogs. Like I don't think it's. I mean, he may continue supporting that line, but I don't think it's going to. He's not going to come across as outlandish as Trump was. So it's really going to be about just who comes off as more authentic, and I think Walz.
Who knows though? Who knows? He could absolutely have a mental breakdown on
you think
stage.
Vance could?
I mean, think about how he's I
would love to see that.
He's had to take the heat for the Haitians eating cats and dogs, and rightfully so. But he's had to take the full heat. He's the one out there getting the questions about it. So, if Tim Walz badgers him the right way, you don't know what we can see from this guy.
Yeah. Although I will say, I think that I can expect JD Vance to bring up the whole Walz lied about carrying guns and when being in war, and he lied about IVF. So I hope that Walz is prepared to answer those questions, because in interviews, he hasn't really responded well to that. And these are non-scandals to me. I don't give a shit about them. But if you're a regular person watching this, then he might come across as like a little bit dishonest. So I hope that he responds to that and is prepared to answer those questions. Real quick, we do have a couple of super chats I want to get to. So Unknown, $5. Thank you so much. This is another prompt. Mike, please check your emails. You're missing bingo with Steam keys as prizes. I've still not checked my emails. I'm so sorry. But I know that they're doing a bingo in the Humanist Report Discord. Shout out to the Discord moderator. I am Dynamic Editor. I'm so sorry. I almost forgot your name, but I appreciate you. Asa with $2. On a lighter note, Jimmy is now 100. Yeah, happy birthday, Jimmy Carter. Sakti with $5. The season finale of Humanity has arrived, guys. It's going to be lit. Yeah, I mean, look, it's entertaining. I'll put it that way. So that's what we've got so far.
Less, if you have a child, it's less entertaining. Gotta say.
Yeah, it's not as fun to watch when you're part of the season finale or series finale, perhaps. I'm not sure. But, you know, nonetheless, I'm glued, so it's good entertainment.
So the debate should be starting in about a minute. We will be doing the C-SPAN little simulcast.
They're on stage now, apparently.
Well, not according to C-SPAN.
Okay, we're watching this through C-SPAN, everybody, because CBS News is
if they're
notorious.
On stage, it's a minute away. They shouldn't be on stage now. Yeah, CBS News is a little weird with their, even though this is their debate, but.
Yeah, as long as we don't have the CBS logo, then hopefully they won't be able to strike us, but who knows what happens after this. I just hope that they don't take the stream down. Cross my fingers, though.
Should I put the audio on?
Sure. Not yet. We don't know. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, who cares? Who cares? Whatever you want to do.
Here we go.
News Vice
Let's get this
Presidential
off the screen.
debate here on C-SPAN. Again, a little more than 90 minutes of debate expected tonight between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. After the debate, we'll hear your phone calls and see your reaction on social media and take a look inside the spin room in New York.
Also, no complaining about sound. This is max sound. This is all the control I have. I hope the sound is fine. I can't do anything about it. Turn your audio up. We will turn our mics down if we have to.
Just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become Vice President of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight,
again, right?
meeting for the first time.
I don't think so.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil
No
debate,
camera on the handshake?
these are
Come
the
on.
rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum. We have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that
If it's going to be
region
shitty for Walz, it's
over
better
the
to start
past
with this
year
than
to
end
try
with
to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time.
That's because
Governor
Trump got out of
Walz,
the JCPOA.
if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took
No,
prisoners.
it didn't start with that. It started with the
Iran,
fucking occupation. But anyways,
Israel's ability
I hate this
to be able to
fucking
defend
shit.
itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support
the captioning,
or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So live captioning is always weird.
First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here
this is actually
asking
smart.
to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country.
This is
for the
really
American
smart,
dream that made
actually.
it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Bad guys.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its
There you
place.
go.
So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him.
It's not a strong enough
Steady
word, my
leadership
friend.
like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible.
Oh,
Did
God,
he
I
make
hate
a
Trump
mistake?
so
You
much.
have 1 minute.
Well, first
What
of
a
all,
piece of
Margaret,
shit.
diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently
Is the vice
made
president
the
the one
world
that does
more
the deals?
secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets
Because of
but effective
Trump's
smart
Abraham
diplomacy and peace
Yes,
through
you gotta bring
strength
it up,
is
because Walz
how you
know
bring
enough to bring
stability
it up.
back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself.
Peace through
at home,
strength,
when was
de-escalation
the
by
last
escalation.
time- I'm 40 years old. When was the last
All
time
very
that an
Orwellian.
American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
That's
Gentlemen,
bullshit.
we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Trump supported Saudi Arabia's
Let's turn now to
genocide in
Hurricane
Yemen.
Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead.
Wow, moving on
and
from this
hundreds
already.
more are
It's
missing.
good for Walz.
Scientists say
Right.
climate
Yeah, it is.
change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed,
But we don't want to do anything about
friends
it.
talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions. This idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris
she said it was a Chinese hoax.
Her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy
He's
policies.
coming off
now,
as such a slimy politician.
Governor Walz said, I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States.
Let's do a Green New Deal then.
Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil. But the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure.
This is just an issue that Tim Walz just sounds like he knows more about.
In the
like
future.
he actually sounds like an expert on this.
By burying our power lines, how do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things?
And this is your like middle America conversation.
But to call it a hoax,
like this is completely stepping on their toes.
To Mar-a-Lago.
This is why they hired this guy to be VP. This is why they got this guy.
Whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as
This is
one
another
of the
thing where he
top
could completely
issue
whiff based
for
on
American
Biden
voters.
and Kamala.
Senator
Let's see.
Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could
Very
you be more
fascist.
specific about
Let's
exactly
say
how
it in a
this
different
will
way,
work?
please. That was
For
a little
example,
bit too
would you deport parents
shining
who
it
have
up real
entered
nice
the
for
U.S.
them, you know?
illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance
Fentanyl
because
comes
Kamala
through
Harris
legal
let
ports
in
of entry, by the
fentanyl
way,
into our
not
communities
through
at
undocumented
record
immigrants.
levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do
amazing.
you care to respond to any of the
Amazing.
specific
Just
allegations,
insane.
including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl
A Republican
and using
wrote the
kids
border
as
bill, and
drug
Trump said
mules,
no.
among other things
Yeah,
regarding
well,
children?
the drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator,
He's
question
good
was,
here.
Will you separate
too.
parents from their children,
Yeah, he's
even if their kids
This was
are
a vulnerability,
US
but
citizens? You
he
have 1
handled
minute.
it well.
Margaret,
Even
my
though I
point
hate that
is
bill.
we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look,
That's
we
humiliating
fix this
for Americans.
issue with a bill that is necessary. But the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president.
The heartbreaking thing of the border is the law enforcement not having more power, not like what you see going on there with people.
You've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz broke
bare minimum doing what they can to get into the country.
He's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio,
that is not why.
They're also not illegal. They're legally
destroyed by
Right.
Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable. But it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, But Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And
Tim
just
Walz
to
crushed
clarify
it in this
for our
portion.
viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well,
Nora?
Margaret, but
Thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you,
I think it's
Nora.
important
We're
because
going to turn now to the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the
Shut up,
rules
dipshit.
were that
The
you guys
economy-
weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app.
Oh, he's about
where
to
you
step
can
in
go
it.
on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole. and
Remember
be
how we talked
granted
earlier? How I
legal
said that
status
we might see him
at the
snap?
wave of
He's
a
snapping
Kamala
right now.
Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret.
All right, now,
by-
yeah, now
Thank
she
you,
seems like
Senator, for
now she seems like a
describing the
lunatic.
legal
And
process.
Kamala-
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been
much.
on the
That's
books
legal
since
immigration,
1990.
dummy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
we
CBP
want to
One
have
app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris
They muted him.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal
Oh, that was so
process.
humiliating. He should have
Nora,
just
thank you,
stopped.
Margaret.
Yeah, he should have
The
not.
economy
Oh my
is a
God.
top concern
I
for
told you
voters.
he was
Each
gonna
of your
snap.
campaigns has released an
You have the
economic
I would
best
call
plan,
that.
so
comments,
let's
That
talk
isn't
about
Trump.
the
That isn't
specifics.
Trump level
Governor
snapping,
Walz,
but that is
Right.
President
Well, he
Harris unveiled
wasn't
a
going to
plan that
friggin' have a
includes billions
complete
in
meltdown
tax
about
credits for
the
manufacturing,
audience size, but that's
housing,
a
and
JD
renewed
Vance
child tax
snapping, and
credit.
he's gonna it's gonna
The
build,
Wharton
I think.
School says your
'Cause he got
proposals
cut.
will increase the nation's
I think we'll see
deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it, it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a
Flawless
moment
answer.
to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan
Yep.
and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear.
Oh, that's going to be a
is that
soundbite.
Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies.
No,
and
she
what
doesn't.
she's
Vice
actually
president doesn't
done
have
instead
shit
is
power,
drive the cost
honestly.
of food higher by 25%.
The biggest thing they do is the
drive
tiebreaker
the
vote
cost
in
of
the Senate.
housing higher by
Yeah.
about 60%. open the American southern border, and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now, not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans.
But they expired.
It was
the tax cuts for the rich are permanent.
An American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom.
Trickle
so
down,
that
baby.
You can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Oh, okay. How are you going to pay for it, though?
What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage.
He's getting the hang of this.
9 million jobs.
Yeah, he's getting better as he warms
day
up.
One, whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere,
I mean, the goods we buy
that
are made in China
they were
are much
wrong
cheaper
about
than
that. They were wrong
but if they were
about the
made here,
idea
I mean,
that if
that's
we made
accurate. What is he
America
talking about?
less productive in our own nation,
And there
that would
were
somehow make us
experts at
better
the
off,
time
and they were wrong about
discussing
it.
about
And for the
the
first time in a
pitfalls
generation, Donald Trump
free
had
trade.
the wisdom
Mm-hmm.
and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're
And those were
not doing
left-wing
it anymore.
people,
We're bringing
not
American
right-wing people.
manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop.
He's
And we're
going
not
into
gonna
dangerous
stop it by
territory.
listening to experts.
This is
We're going to stop
conspiracy
it by
shit
listening
right
to
there.
common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump
He's
does.
got to bring up
Senator,
this.
You're right.
Governor,
Canada does
you
hate
address
you.
that? I mean, voters
Don't
say
trust
they trust
Canadian
Donald
drugs.
Trump on the economy.
Don't
more.
bring in those
Why?
cheap Canadian
If
drugs.
you're
We're
listening
gonna kill
tonight
you.
and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult.
Yep.
We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that
Bring up the longshoremen.
are
Bring up the longshoremen
venture
who are out there
capital
right
in some
now.
cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a gross generalization.
that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table.
Do you support Medicare for all then?
I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching,
pandering,
we
but
can
it's
get
empty
back
and
to an
hollow.
America that's affordable.
I'm
again.
afraid people
we
fall
just got
for
to
it,
get
though.
back
Like,
to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice.
They're doing a
the
good job,
president hears
obviously,
before
fact-checking Vance.
making consequential
But they're letting him
decisions.
get the last word in almost
wanna ask
every
you
time.
about
He's
your
allowed to
leadership
respond to
qualities.
Walz, and then Walz
Governor
doesn't get
Walz.
any
You
opportunity
said
to
you were in
respond to what
Hong
he
Kong
says.
during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that?
Oh, no!
And to the
They're
folks out
pulling
there
out
that didn't get at the top of
1989?
this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community
Sounds
knows
like he's a
who
communist
I am.
to me.
They saw where I was at. They look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this is I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor.
I don't understand
Senator
what
Vance,
I don't even understand what the issue
Who
is.
cares?
Like, I'm actually confused. What is the problem?
He said he was there
highest office, and you
during
said he
Tiananmen
could be
Square
America's Hitler.
in like June
I
or
know you
July. I
said,
forgot
you've
when
been
it
asked
was.
many
And
times,
it
and
turns
you
out he
said you
actually didn't
regret
get there
those
till
comments
August, which means he was experiencing me
explains you then
after
voted for
math
Donald
of it
Trump
all
in
and everything.
2020.
And he just
But
must
the
have
Washington
35
Post
years
reported new
later
messages last week in
misspoke
which
and
you
said that he was
also
there when
disparaged
the actual
Trump's
Why does this matter? I don't even
Right, who
Yeah,
cares?
exactly.
Writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because
Because I don't want them to hang me like they did to Mike Pence.
The president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example.
Trump had Republican-controlled Congress for the first 2 years in office.
Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says. But look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working-class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want
Republicans just voted against IVF
to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has
He's just going with the talking points, even though Tim Walz just addressed this.
To handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes
it's a basic human right.
Let voters make these decisions. Let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world.
That's such a dumb quote.
Why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a
national ban.
That's a national ban in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not. Though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora,
national
one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families.
The last time you talked.
So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy
He's
their
just repeating what he said.
Their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please,
Yes, Governor, please respond.
This is
bullshit
by
some fucking sky god. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So
yeah, he just answered your question.
President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
All right, can we just talk about how
so far?
Can we just talk about for a second, just straight up how dumb JD Vance is? Like I didn't realize just how stupid and uneducated on the issues he is. Like I thought, you know, he's out there doing the campaign stuff, talking to Donald Trump supporters. So I thought he was dumbing himself down for the audience and just speaking the Donald Trump rhetoric. And when he'd actually be in a room with people asking him questions that he would answer, but he's not. And not just not answering, he's answering with like the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life. Like he actually may be dumber than Donald Trump. Because at least Donald Trump knows how to talk his way out of things. He knows how to use his charisma to sort of finagle his way out of things, even if it is something ridiculous. JD Vance doesn't even have that skill.
I think the one benefit JD Vance has is that he is so boring that I'm finding myself, like, I have to snap myself back into to be like, I got to hear what this guy's saying, because I'm like dozing off here. So if he's saying dumb shit, people are probably not even paying attention because he's so fucking terrible at this.
Right. Yeah, I think that part of the problem with JD Vance is that he is LARPing as a Fox News pundit when he should just try to be personable as Tim Walz is being. I think that at the very, very start of the debate, JD Vance came off as more normal, seemingly, and then as the debate went on, he kind of regressed back into his Hillary Clinton-esque talking point, thumb pointing. I think Tim Walz did the opposite. He was shaky at first, in large part due to that question and his shitty answer, admittedly. But as time went on, you could tell him see that he's becoming more comfortable and whatnot. And he's he's shooting from the hip. Whereas with JD Vance, the second he's knocked off of track, he just goes back to the talking points, which is why he's repeated himself like 3 or 4 times in just that one portion on abortion, which is just so crazy. He's such a robot, and I feel like it's just so fake and phony.
I actually thought, I really did think there was going to be, Tim Walz was in for trouble when JD Vance opened up. I thought it was brilliant. I saw people saying, "Oh, he's not answering the question." No, it was brilliant for him to open up by introducing himself to the audience. I really thought we were in trouble here, and I thought that was a huge stumble from Tim Walz to actually answer the question off the bat without also introducing himself to the audience, because the majority of America honestly has no idea who these two guys are, and first impressions are everything. And the first impression a lot of them are going to have with Tim Walz is him answering this foreign policy question that to a lot of people they just don't know anything about, whereas the first impression they're going to have of JD Vance is him introducing himself, giving a little backstory. I was like, oh man, if he performs like this for the whole night, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
But no, he didn't. In fact, right after that question, everything flipped, and Tim Walz has been hitting out of the park, and JD Vance has been horrible.
I do feel like that China answer was super awkward, though. It just,
Yeah.
I don't even, like, for me, it's just like, what is even the point of this? Like, they clearly had to find something on both of them. Like, this was their intent, because after that, they went to JD Vance and what he said about Trump before. But like, they had to go back to 1989 about a trip where it sounds like he wasn't in China when he claims he was in China. And why that matters, I don't fucking know. That wasn't explained why any of this fucking matters.
Yeah.
If you ask me about a trip I took in 1989 when I was, 4 years old, I'm not gonna fucking remember anything. Like, it's just such a bizarre attempt to attack him. But all Walz had to do was be like, yeah, I misspoke. I was there later. I thought I was there when that happened.
Right.
Like that. But he went in this long fucking thing about it's good to go to China, and like, just don't stop talking about China. It's not helping.
Right.
Tim Walz should have answered that, just like you said. Tim Walz.
He over-answered the question, and it made him look suspicious.
Yeah.
He should have just said, I was a teacher in China. I went there 35 years ago. I was off a little bit about the month I got there. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
right.
It's not a big
We
deal.
want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic, the leading cause of death for children and teens.
Tim Walz
in
can
America
knock this one out of the
is
park
by
if he plays his
firearms.
cards right.
Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns.
That's gotta be a problem.
Drug cartels. So that number,
blame immigrants when all else fails.
Bring up all the recent
than it was 3.5 years ago.
No other country has immigrants, apparently. Because they have no gun problems.
Our kids, and I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger.
Because at Uvalde, we all know that security is great.
Of course, we've got to increase officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer, and I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart.
Why
I
are
agree
you
with
giving
that.
him
But that's not far
humanity?
enough. When
Yeah,
we
don't
look
say
at
that.
Americans love to hear someone be nice to someone they're supposed to not like.
They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting, and I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is, okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse, or mental health
because we also don't have health care. Finland
we have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think that's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem.
Let's talk about
healthcare. I think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think it's a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation.
I think he meant to say he became friends with school shooting victims.
There's a shortage
not
of more
school
than
shooters.
4 million homes in the United
I feel like
States,
that's pretty obvious,
and that
though. You know what he meant.
I mean, he could
contributes to
have
the
talked
high
to school
crisis.
shooters who've been in
Governor
jail
Walz,
and
the
are,
Harris campaign
gone
promises
through
a
restorative
$25,000 down
but
payment assistance
he
for
misspoke
first-time
there.
home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, It can be shifted. It can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up
broken
costs.
record.
25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce
like
homes
Trump
is one of
now.
the
Every
most
answer is
significant
They
drivers
can't buy
of home
homes. Do you
prices
think
in
they
the
can
country. It's
afford
why we
how?
have
What?
massive increases in
Immigrants are
home
buying all these
prices
houses
that have happened right
Damn.
alongside
News to
massive
them.
increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing
and we
here
have
is
none of them in our
Kamala
plan.
Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people
Press the
already
House
gave
button
her,
now, Kamala.
not sit around
Press
and
it.
campaign and do nothing while Americans find
Like
the
what?
American dream of homeownership
This has to be
completely
corrected. The vice
unaffordable.
president
Now,
is
you
not the
asked,
fucking
Margaret,
president.
what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is
They still
also
can't
gonna
afford the
become
down
a lot
payment,
more
though.
expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing release.
That's not going to bring down the
relief
cost
for
of
American
housing.
citizens.
This
Not,
dude
by
doesn't know what
way,
the fuck he's
just in
talking about.
housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer
Can I have it?
where? Yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up.
Is it easy for
Governor,
illegal
I do want
immigrants
to let you
to buy
respond
American
to the
homes? Is that a
allegation
thing?
that the vice president
Americans
is
can't even buy it,
letting
let alone
in-
fucking immigrants. That's insane.
If I could buy a house in the U.S.,
Look,
I
crossing
probably
down
would.
compared
There's
to
some
when
cheap
Donald
ass
Trump
homes
left
there.
office. But it's again blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs.
Just immigration.
What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study
Well,
that
they're
we're
not
happy to
white, so
share
it's gotta
after
be
the
them.
debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers.
Yeah, it's an administration, not a regime.
He
He sounds like an idiot saying that.
That makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail
fires.
for not doing
Throw that out the window.
everything
Forget it.
exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity.
Regulations are protections for us.
But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
No, I'm sorry. What?
I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a
Brilliant.
lot to get to.
Slapping him around.
I think JD Vance is happy he doesn't have to answer that question.
Yeah.
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans.
He should have
is the
pointed
high
out
cost
one of the people on
healthcare.
stage right now.
Healthcare.
At the
Oh my
last
God, we're talking about
presidential
healthcare
debate,
again.
former President Trump was asked about
Been
replacing
years.
the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. Look, it's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%.
So should we be able to negotiate the prices of all of them?
Think about healthcare. You go into a
Did
hospital.
Trump do anything
you try
to
buy
make
something,
prices low?
And nobody knows
No,
what it actually
it just
costs.
happened to
That
be
price
lower, so
transparency
he gets
will actually
credit.
give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure
He
destroy
it. What are you talking
really
about?
tried.
What?
He was one vote away from destroying it. John
McCain
McCain
I think
saved
that
it.
Donald Trump has earned
And then he
the
shit on
right
John
to
McCain
put in
endlessly.
place some better
Like, what the-
healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
You didn't do shit. What?
So much bullshit there.
Come on, Tim Walz got to hit him here.
I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it.
Exactly.
That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions.
What law is
we
that,
want to keep
Vance?
those
What
regulations
law is that?
in place,
That's
but
called
we also want to make
Obamacare.
the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then what happens is... So you think the
individual mandate's a good idea?
You shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said As much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping
even when he
jobs overseas.
intellectualizes Trump's comments,
proposal.
it sounds stupid as shit.
What President Trump is saying is that when we bring
That's what he said about childcare
with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
To misunderstand.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz,
she just asked you
your
how
ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors.
Which is fraud.
That has been called unconstitutional and illegal.
Yep.
Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable.
Wow.
And that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020. And my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that
it's
Donald
not
Trump
debatable.
Has said. Remember,
that's all he
said
said.
That on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration.
Awful answer.
I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans
not immigrants.
Aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow
Twitter,
citizens.
Elon Musk.
It's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in
Well, he's the
misinformation.
Rumble guy, right? So.
I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud.
Let's talk about
especially
BDS
given
then,
I was
Vance.
raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. Of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue.
Yes,
we don't
please
have
mention
to agree on every issue, but we're united
brainworm in the
behind a
dipshit.
basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other
Trump
issues.
wants to
and
jail
that,
people
me,
for
is a
burning
much
the
bigger threat
flag.
to democracy
He's against
than
BDS.
what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters
Wants
should
to
peacefully
jail people
protest.
for criticizing Scottish justices.
Fake slate of electors.
Well, I've
what
enjoyed
Trump
tonight's
said.
debate, and I think there was a lot
Yeah.
of commonality.
Jamal
here, and
should
I'm
just
sympathetic in
reply.
speaking on
Guys, you
things,
hear
and I think I
that?
might have with,
He's
with the
endorsed.
senator, but
Me
there's-
too,
by
there's
Bobby
one- There's one, though, but this one is troubling to me. And I say that because I think we need to tell the story.
And what's her
Donald
family? I'm
Trump
forgetting her
refused
name.
to acknowledge this. And the fact is that I
Tulsi
don't think you can be
Gabbard.
the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear
I
that
rest
he
my
lost
case.
this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We're going to shake hands after this
He
debate
tried to steal
and
the
after this
election.
And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim
They really
Walz
got
is
to
the next
hammer
vice
home. It wasn't
president,
just a speech.
He'll have my
Like,
prayers, he'll have my best wishes,
the
and he'll
fake
have my
slate of
help
electors, a whole
whenever
plan behind the
he wants
scenes.
it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians
she still
bought like
conceded, though. That's a
$500,000
false
worth of
equivalence.
Facebook ads. This
She was
has been going
insufferable,
on
but
for
she
a long
conceded.
time. And if we
She
want to
had
say
no
that
fake slate
we
of
need to
electors.
respect the results of
Right.
the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Oh my God.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is
all you have to do is say yes.
Non-answer.
Has she? It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously,
He just
Donald Trump
finished
is
talking
talking
about it.
2020. We've talked about it.
Embarrassing.
I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most
He's gotta
sacred
reply
right
again.
under the United States democracy
Yeah.
is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big
No,
tech
don't
to
fall
silence
into his
people
what
from
is the
speaking
topic.
their
Yeah,
minds.
don't talk about
That is a
this.
threat to
The fact that he
democracy
didn't
will
answer the
long
question.
outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come
So do
together.
you condemn
bullshit.
anti-BDS
You can't yell
laws?
fire in a crowded theater. That's the test.
Don't
That's the
fall
Supreme
into
Court's
don't.
test.
Don't
Tim,
fall into his
fire in a crowded
discussion.
theater. You guys wanted to kick people
No.
off of Facebook.
What are you doing?
For saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the governor
masks.
does
That's
He
have
not
didn't
far
answer
off.
the
Fire in
question.
a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about
There
is
you go.
where
Oh,
is the
hitting.
firewall
Oh.
Yep.
with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate
over?
continues.
I'm sure they're going to come back with closing statements. It's over 90 minutes, though, which I am insulted by.
I'm also insulted by that.
Yeah.
That was he should have hit that note a little bit harder, actually.
Mm-hmm.
That you are here right now because
Yeah.
Mike Pence wouldn't steal the election for Donald Trump. 'Cause
It's a
otherwise Mike Pence would
devastating
be up there.
point.
Yes.
You should have hammered that home.
I would even-
You shouldn't
I
have
would
fell
even
into
look-
this censorship shit at all. Just you didn't answer the
Yeah.
question. Like, why
Yeah.
would
I would
you?
even-
Why can't you say that Trump lost the election?
Yeah,
I would even
censorship
hit
is a
that
non sequitur. Tim, like, there's so many things you could say to hit him on it, like anti-BDS and whatnot, and Trump talking about flag burning, but it doesn't matter because he's trying to pivot away from something that he doesn't want to talk about because obviously this is indefensible. What Trump did is indefensible. And he literally said just a couple of weeks ago that he would have committed fraud and asked for fraudulent electors. That's what JD Vance said. So he is vocalizing his intent to commit fraud, and then when he's asked about it, he's like, I want to stay focused on the future. Listen, whenever a politician answers a question by saying, I want to stay focused on the future, that's a very bad sign, to put it mildly. It's a red flag. Because, I don't know. What do you all think so far, though? I'm curious about the overall state.
I think, I almost don't know what to think. Like, to me, this isn't as obvious and clear as Kamala and Trump. Like, clearly,
Agree.
I think Walz Walz is not lying. Like, but I know that as somebody who knows everything, so it's hard for me to judge this as like a normal person watching this, and like, because I feel like JD Vance is probably coming off more normal in this debate than he has in other speeches or interviews.
Mm-hmm.
But so that may be helping him. Like, I don't think JD Vance is necessarily putting the campaign underwater with this performance,
right?
But I also don't think he's like winning the campaign with it either. So it's to me that this debate feels like a wash. Like, I don't think it's really going to have much of an impact. But it's hard to really know what to think because, again, I know everything already. Not everything, but I know who's full of shit and who's not.
You've heard all these talking points multiple times. You could recite them in your sleep.
It's just and like, just what's bothering me is I just wish Walz was was stronger against Vance. Like there are moments where he could have hit him harder and he hasn't.
Yeah.
That's what's bugging me as a viewer, but I don't know if he even really needs to do that. I don't know.
It feels like he is kind of holding back in a way. He's hitting him when he needs to, but he could hit him so much harder and make it so much more ruthless. I think that there's this fear that maybe he's going to come off as too aggressive. Maybe that's the case. I'm not really sure. But yeah, to me, I think that my expectations of Walz are kind of like playing out. I think that he's doing well. I am worried that he might come off as a little bit too wonkish because he's very clearly knowledgeable. And is this going to be overwhelming? Are Americans going to think that he's too pretentious and like falls into that stereotype of like the know-it-all liberal? It's honestly hard to say. This one is difficult to assess like where the average American is going to fall because Americans are very brainwashed, biased, and sometimes stupid people. So what are they going to take away? It's hard to say, honestly.
Yeah, it's also hard to know like who's swayable here.
I would say Tim Walz didn't really have to do much though, except come across as likable, which is why he was so nice. Which is why he was, so nice to JD Vance and harping on the bipartisan thing and where they agree. And this is JD Vance's debate to lose. He's the one who needs to change the minds of. I mean, he's the one who's the least popular person in the race out of the four people. He is the one who's even. Yeah, I mean, it's his debate to lose. Walz just had to continue that idea
Welcome back to
of who
CBS
he
News
is.
Vice Presidential debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well,
they flipped the Bitcoin.
Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the
You're
folks
welcome.
who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the
That's still
democracy
on.
matters. It matters.
I made him
that
sound
you're
like a
here.
boomer. He shouldn't have said
and I'm
that.
as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris
Do
has
you not
built,
realize the people
from
who
Bernie
like him?
Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country.
Did he
and
say
one
Dick
where our
Cheney, Bernie
politics can
Sanders,
be
and Taylor
better
Swift?
than it is.
I
And
missed the
have to
Bernie
tell you,
part, but I heard
that
Taylor
better-
Swift and Dick
that
Cheney
better than it is
and everybody in between.
is the sense of optimism
Citing
that
Dick
there
Cheney
can
is
be
so
an
fucking
opportunity
stupid.
economy.
Maybe I'm
that
just
works
hearing
for everyone,
Bernie.
not
I don't
just
think
to
he
get
said
by,
Bernie.
but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or
You
your
should
exam
mention
room,
Bernie.
but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being
There's
raised
just so
by my
something
grandmother,
off about how this
when
guy
she didn't
looks.
have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because
the
Ohio
eyeliner.
gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that, too, has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's
They have no
policies.
policies to address any of these
I've been in
problems.
politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve.
I'm starving right now, but it's so nice to
full
meet you, sir. I can't wait to see you
with the
cut
broken
taxes for
leadership
rich
that we have
people.
in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their
Gotta go
American
before I
dream
die.
if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And
They're just
whether you
betting on
vote for me
amnesia
or
at
vote
this
for
point,
Tim
like-
Walz, I just want to say,
And that's
I'm
a
so
great
proud
bet,
to be doing
honestly.
this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please
Oh my
get
God,
out
really?
and vote.
Don't remind
And for
me.
all of us
Shit.
here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye, Marge.
I think that I believe that Tim Walz won, but it definitely was not the blowout that we saw with Kamala Harris. And ultimately, even though I think that Tim Walz performed better, I think that this probably isn't going to move the needle in either direction. I think that JD Vance had a really monumental task ahead of him, and that was to come off as likable, since he is the least likable person in the race currently, according to favorability ratings. I don't think he delivered that. I think that at the start, he looked really confident and strong and tried to appear normal, but like throughout the debate, little by little, he unraveled. He couldn't answer questions, whereas Tim Walz did answer the questions, and he explained it really well, and he has the advantage of coming from a state that's very successful, and he's the governor of that state. So he can speak to policies. He can cut through the bullshit, the fear-mongering, because he has that executive experience. So overall, Tim Walz won. It wasn't the knockout punch that I was hoping for, in my opinion, but nonetheless, I feel like this is probably going to be a bit of a wash. I don't know what you all think.
I mean, I just don't think that they went in it the same way. Harris, as a woman and facing Trump, had to come across in a different way, based on the public perception of her, and that Tim Walz had to come into this with a different strategy based on the public perception of him. There was no reason for him to go in and destroy JD Vance. That's not his gimmick. That's not his new facade that they have him with, where he's the friendly Midwestern American. He's the guy who is the cliche middle America guy, but he's a Democrat. Oh, that's the
Right.
that's the
Didn't see
that's
that
the M.
coming.
Night
Wow.
Shyamalan swerve there. That's his eyes. I don't think they want him to go in and destroy Vance. They wanted him to go out there as like the guy who the America that isn't comfortable with Kamala will be comfortable in the soothing arms of America's daddy, Tim Walz. That's what. That's literally what his role is.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think you're right. I think he did what he needed to do. Like, it's just, obviously I'm not the right audience for this debate. Like, I wanted to see different. I wanted to see blood. Like,
I wanted to see some cheeks get clapped.
Yeah. Like I was hoping for something
Then-
more, but clearly
Then
you're
you need
right.
to
He
hope
went in
for
there with a different
Kamala.
strategy.
You need to hope for a Kamala JD Vance debate, and then she'll spread them.
Oh, I would
Yeah.
love to see Kamala go. I was going to
Clap
say that happened
JD
before.
Vance,
That
as
didn't
Mike
happen
would
before, but that was
say.
Pence.
As Mike would say,
Clap
you
them
want to see
cheeks.
Kamala clap JD Vance's cheeks.
Metaphorically, people. No, to David's point, I agree. It does feel like Walz was holding back And that did frustrate me because I think that there's so much ammunition that he has. We didn't even bring up the the single cat lady comment, which has driven down his support. I think that Tim Walz should have found some way to shoehorn that in. There's little missed opportunities here and there that I think that Walz could have capitalized on. Having said that, though, I think that he did a good job at responding to attacks from JD Vance, but he wasn't really on the offensive that much of this debate. But he could have put JD Vance on the, or I should say he wasn't on the defensive, but he should have put JD Vance on the defensive more, but he really didn't. He kind of let him get away with some of it. Although, like, it wasn't like he got away with too much. I think that last part of the debate where JD Vance was asked, like, would you, or do you think that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? And he said, I'm looking towards the future. That was probably the most devastating part of the debate. And that's going to be a sticking point for sure, because democracy is, I guess, the second most important issue after the economy and inflation, according to the CBS hosts. So I think that that's something that is probably going to be cut into an ad, rightfully so, by the Kamala team. Aside from that, though, it's a VP debate. These typically don't matter that much, but the caveat is that when the race is this close, it could have. And I feel part of me thinks that this was a little bit of a missed opportunity. I get what Matt is saying, and I think he's correct, but I wish that Walz just went a little bit harder, turned up the heat just a tiny bit more, because again, there's so much to work with JD Vance.
Yeah, he was also like, I get going in and wanting to seem like the nice guy as Tim Walz, but when JD Vance is sort of recouping some of the support that he has lost, like, or like when he's out there polishing his image, you can't just let him continue doing that. Like, you got to undercut him. Like that's when you change strategy. It's like, no, actually, I got to hit you now, because you are coming off as more likable, because you're like, oh, I agree with Tim Walz on this, and oh, actually, Trump isn't that bad. Like they didn't say it that way, but the way JD Vance was able to dance around a lot of these topics and come off as somebody who I think to the average person at least appears to be more competent. You have to, as the opponent there, undermine that and showcase no. And the one time he did, when he asked him, did Trump lose the election? You saw what happened. JD Vance couldn't answer the fucking question. If there were more moments like that spread throughout the night, I think that would have helped Walz in this debate. Because again, I don't think I agree. I think it's kind of a wash. Like, it's the VP debate. Who cares anyways? But I don't think JD Vance, lost the debate. I don't think Walz lost the debate. To me, it's just sort of like, whatever. Just like a bunch of Walz came off clearly more knowledgeable. I hope that's clear to most people, even if you're not knowledgeable of the topics. It's clear Walz knew what he was talking about.
The section where he was talking about, like, I mean, I'm not an expert in this area, so I'm just gonna have to be general here. But he was getting very specific with farmers and things like that. He seemed like he wasn't a politician. He seemed like he was a guy.
He was talking about climate change there.
He seemed like a guy who was like out there in the fields working with the farmers. Like he was really knowledgeable about it, and not as in like a detached sort of way. Like he was like in it way that I don't think I've really heard from any sort of national level politicians on a debate stage that way.
Yeah,
he was really good on that, and I think that's going to resonate with the people who that needs to resonate with. But all in all, it is a VP debate. People aren't voting based on the VP. Although Vance is so unlikable, maybe there are going to be at least a few people.
Yeah,
that's possible.
Yeah. So I'm curious what you all think about the abortion portion of the debate. I think that, to me, it was important that they focused on JD Vance's extremism a little bit, but there was so much more. I hate that Walz did not bring up that he supported a national ban with no exceptions. Like, he is the most extreme on this issue, and I kind of feel like he got away with it. He didn't do well. Of course, it was a devastating portion of the debate for JD Vance, but I feel like there was so much more. I just feel like,
Mike,
overall,
it's not an abortion ban; it's an abortion standard. Okay,
that's true.
He didn't support an abortion.
I forgot about that.
So it was kind of brought up, but he just like, oh,
Right.
not a ban, it was a standard, okay?
I just support standards that apply to all 50 states. Okay, minimum requirements. Okay, but it's not a national ban. Yeah, that was funny. I forgot about that. It's just here's the problem with JD Vance. He is the Republican equivalent of Hillary Clinton, and it was obvious what he was trying to do. He was trying to come off as this affable, likable person, even agreeable at times with Tim Walz. And Tim Walz needed to not take that bait. He needed to be a little bit more aggressive, just a little bit more aggressive, not be affable in response and say, well, I agree with you here as well. And to be fair, Tim Walz mostly did that with like the old quotes from JD Vance that were negative about Donald Trump. But I just feel like you're kind of playing into what he wants by doing that. And again, I'm being overly critical here when I don't feel like I need to be, because I don't think that the debate is going to be that consequential. But I just feel like maybe I set my expectations a bit too high for Tim Walz. I think he's great. He's a phenomenal orator. And I think that rural roots that he has, like that comes through, and it's going to appeal to Americans because he just seems like a very likable, personable person. But he's also very knowledgeable. And I don't know. I think I wanted to see more fireworks. I wanted to see JD Vance faceplant.
I will say a missed opportunity, just like you brought up how the cat lady thing on Vance, not bringing that up was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I'll say a missed opportunity for Walz was not doing his the thing that got him there, which is pointing out how weird Republicans are in general. Like, he didn't do that once.
Right.
Like, that's not incompatible with the nice guy thing, to simply point out that I'm worried for the country because of how weird these guys' ideas are. He didn't. There was missed opportunities for sure.
Trump said people are eating pets last debate. How do you not bring that up?
Yeah. Walz seemed too overcoached. Like he was told to not be mean.
That's it.
To not go, for the jugular. Like he really the ongoing agreeing. It was just like, oh my god. There's one point where it's like, I know JD Vance cares about what was, like, I think it was like gun violence. Like, he fucking doesn't care about gun. Are you fucking
right?
Why are you humanizing him?
Yeah.
When clearly his policies showcase he does not care.
Yeah.
It's just there was no need to go out of. It's one thing to like be just non-confrontational. It's another to humanize your opponent. I don't think that benefits Walz. Like, I don't know,
not at all.
Binder, you thought it was a good thing that he's like agreeing with them, like that Americans like that.
I mean,
but doesn't that help Vance look better though?
No, I mean, he didn't say he agreed with him. A lot of the things he said were like, I agree with like we agree on the problem, but not like the solution. I think
I don't think Vance
America
cares about gun violence at all.
Yeah,
of course, there were obviously he was overdoing it. You don't got to do it all like it was too much. But yes, America likes to hear bipartisanship. It's the dumbest thing imaginable, because what they actually want is the most partisan things imaginable. But they like this stupid fucking vague idea.
They want a good ass show.
Bipartisanship. Yes. They want they like it's but it is what it is. And I do think I think he overdid it. But he needed to do
JD
it.
Vance,
he needed to do it to a point.
Yeah, I feel like you need to do that, and that's true. Yeah, it's kind of an antiquated way of thinking, because we're in the Trump era now, where we're talking about fascists, and JD Vance would never humanize the people he's demonizing in the way that he gets to be humanized by his opponents. Like, he talked about Haitian immigrants and said that he had to create stories, and I'm glad that Tim Walz brought that up, but he also said he was going to still continue to call them illegal immigrants, even though they're literally here legally. And then, as you saw, he like had a fit when he couldn't explain how no, they're actually only here legally because of a program from Kamala Harris. They're here legally, period. So like, how they are here legally doesn't matter, because you say that legal immigration is not the problem, it's illegal immigration, but you're kind of contradicting yourself here and kind of showing your cards, because you're saying, well, maybe it's about the people, maybe it's because they're black. Like, that's the subtext here. So that's why I do feel a little bit frustrated that Walz did not go balls to the walls, pun intended. But at the end of the day, he didn't do bad. I think he did a good job. I worry that he maybe comes off as a little bit wonky, but I think maybe that's canceled out by the folksy appeal. It's hard to gauge what Americans will think about this. I have to talk to like some of my my normie friends and family members who don't follow politics as closely because their takeaway is probably going to be what other Americans think, because for us, our brains are just too rotted from consuming politics nonstop. So to me, I can watch that and say, yes, Tim Walz did great. He could have done better. But what's the average person going to think? I don't think that they're going to like JD Vance because he still came off as a very slimy politician. And that was really noticeable, especially towards the end when he just like shamelessly dodged that question. I'm going to look to the future. That is not something you want to say about something this serious. And the fact that he didn't prepare for a better response to that is really embarrassing.
Yeah. And I do think that China answer was so bad from Walz. It was just like, what?
It
Why
was,
are you talking
yeah.
for 10 minutes about China? It's fucking like just answer the goddamn question. I was the trip was 30 fucking years ago. I forgot. Like I forgot when I was
right.
there. And I was there in the what was it the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square, like whatever. Like it felt like I was there at the time because it happened around the same time. Like who fucking cares? This is such a weird question. But again, if they're going to ask the question, you got to be ready to answer just honestly and quickly. When something like that is brought up, it's just bizarre.
Yeah, it was giving the 2020 debate when the moderators were trying to bring up Bernie Sanders' comments he made about Cuban's healthcare system or something, or when he visited the Soviet Union for his honeymoon or some shit. You know what I mean?
Where it's visited the Soviet Union, Mr. Sanders.
I don't give a fuck. Like, why am I supposed to care about this? But yeah, I agree with you, David. I think that Walz was trying to over-explain, but by over-explaining, he ended up looking a little bit sus when he doesn't need to feel.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to feel worried about this because it doesn't. None of us care about this.
It came off as like defensive when it didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, nobody gives a shit. Like I don't give a fuck about this. Like, okay, what time was he in China?
But now
when
people
was
care
he not
more.
in China?
Like that would have been a forgettable moment if he just answered it quickly. Now it's like people will remember the weirdness when he had to.
I think you're over. Overdoing it too. I don't think anyone's
it was just weird. The whole thing was weird. The whole question was
think
weird.
about why this was asked in the first place, because Republicans are insinuating that this man is a fucking communist Maoist. He was in China, so he has some loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. Like that's the implication of this.
Why the fuck is CBS buying? Like they know that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Like
it goes to show you they had nothing else to criticize him for, so they had to appear, impartial.
1989. They had to go back to 1989.
Yeah.
And CNN has ran the story about the China thing. That's why they covered it.
Of course, CNN did.
Today, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, good job, CNN. That's some real hard-hitting journalism.
What is that a fucking story? I don't understand why it matters.
Yeah, it's more controversial to me that Trump is praising the current Hungarian dictator and going there and, chumming it up with him.
There are probably 200 more controversial things that JD Vance has said or done, or inconsistencies in what he has said that were not brought up, that are much worse than mistaking when you went to China. Weird.
Like, it's so strange.
Anyways, I have no super chats because I have no super chats on this channel, so I'm going to jump off. You all can enjoy your super chats tonight. You got all the money.
There's not that many, honestly.
Yeah, there's not. We'll be out of here pretty quickly.
Unless people want us to stay by dropping more super chats, and then I'll be forced to stay. Please don't do that, everybody.
I gotta sell your damn face on Thursday, so I'm not gonna be here too much longer. I'll see you all again in 2 days.
Right, David.
Take care, David.
Take care. Have a great night.
You too.
Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and read mine, and then I'll stop when it comes to one of yours and let you read that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip the first 3. Thank you, Bobby, for becoming a new member. Also, thank you to Logic Bees for becoming a new member. We got 2 for you from Tunbosin. Here's the first one.
Tunbosin with 2 super chats. Yeah, he's not going to be answering questions directly. JD, what topsoil?
Yep. Fritza Jacques, thank you for the $1.99. Naturally, immigrants are responsible for bad things. Oh, well, of course. If you stub your toe, you know who to blame. Immigrants, of course. CS Coolidge, $5. Thank you. If immigrants are truly supplying the guns, how was it that native-born parents have been convicted for it? Right. Yeah, maybe they got it from immigrants, because you always have to blame immigrants for literally everything. Fritza with another $1.99. They are going to twist that answer like a pretzel. Yeah, I think maybe Frida is referring to... Actually, I don't know what Frida is referring to, but they might take the portion where Tim Walz was like, I was friends with a school shooter, where he clearly misspoke, but it's a bad misspeak.
That would be so stupid to grab that though, because that's
Right.
obviously it's like that's not. You grab a misspoken thing when like they talk backwards on a policy. Clearly,
Right.
no one thinks Tim Walz is hanging out with school shooters.
Right. CS Coolidge with $5. Thank you. Good for Gov Walz fighting the stigma around mental illness. Yeah, I'm really glad that he said that, actually. That was a great line on gun violence. Fritza, thank you for the $1.99 again. We are immigrants, not aliens from another planet. Yeah, it does bother me that he keeps saying that, because he does talk about them as if they're aliens. And that's the point. You know, he doesn't call them, he calls them aliens because he's trying to dehumanize them. So it is purposeful, but it is gross, and I'm glad that you are picking up on that, and we're not desensitized to that. Fritza, thank you again. No, David, even legals cannot buy a home in America. Yeah, that is very much true. Fritza, again, thank you so much, Fritza. Mike, it's like Matt said, JD is a moron. Yeah, I agree.
Damn, Mike, you're on fire with these super chats.
Got a lot.
Jeez.
Save Grace and Cats, $5. I wish the fact check would say exactly how many non-citizens own single-family homes in the U.S. Yeah, that would be nice. We've got one for you.
Oh. Tokyo Hans with a super chat. Vance on childcare. People say they don't have options. We're going to make it easy. Women stay home to take care of kids. We're going to raise pay for working men? No.
Right.
I mean, if I recall correctly, his childcare is his mother-in-law. Like that's what happened. Like that's what he also came out and said. That's what he believes, that what was it, his thing, menopausal women's role are to take care of children.
He said something like that, where that was like their
Christ almighty. I mean,
yeah, I don't know what the exact verbiage was, but he said it in a really fucked up and demeaning way, where it's like, no, that's their purpose of the menopausal women in this country. They should take care of their grandchildren. It just, the way he said it was very gross.
Yes.
Sakti with $5. Guys, there's been a mass shooting in Tel Aviv. I've not heard about this yet. I will have to look into
that. That was a long time ago. Well, it was earlier today. It was earlier today.
Oh, okay. I did not pick up on this. I did my video on Iran and then Israel invading Lebanon, and then I did not look at anything online after that. So I'll have to look into that. Fritza with $4.99. Thank you so much, Fritza. The moderator should have had a follow-up question for the bogus childcare answer. It was a perfect opportunity for the childless cat lady comment. Yeah, absolutely. Save Grace and Cats with $20. Thank you so much. But the percentage of homes in the U.S. owned by non-Americans is usually pretty small, between 2% and 3%. The percentage of commercial real estate owned by foreign investors is a lot higher. Yeah. I mean, that would have been a point that he could have made, but JD Vance was too focused on demonizing like individual immigrants, but he doesn't care about like multinationals or foreign investors buying up homes. It's just, those immigrants at the very low level, the individuals, the families, they're the ones who are causing the housing crisis because they're buying up all these homes and now you have nothing. It's like, bro, who believes this? Who believes that an immigrant who came here with the clothes on their back is buying homes? Jesus, if it's that easy for them, what are we all doing wrong, right? Sage and Candle with $2. Thank you so much. He's shaming those using it. He sees it as charity. This one's for you.
Looney Tunes 9000. Walz should have said "fuck you" to CBS. The mods were right, down rude and AI sounding. They have no balls to fact check JD Vance. They did. I thought they did an okay job.
I didn't take much issue with the moderation. CS Coolidge.
None of these moderators are great.
They're all establishment, like very centrist at best.
In terms of what we could have got, I thought they did fine.
Yeah, I agree. CS Coolidge, $5. Thank you, CS. Abortion Portion. Should be a Schoolhouse Rock song. Great watch party, amigos. Well, thank you so much. Glad you tuned in. Big Mac with $20. Thank you so much. Not gonna lie, I think you had the most nuanced take on Alan Lichtman, Mike, mostly because you didn't outright dismiss him. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I didn't make a video about this, but I tweeted about Alan Lichtman. This is the professor who came up with the 13 keys to predict
that guy's
elections.
crazy. Sorry, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not as dignified. I'm not as nuanced. That guy sounds crazy.
Well, listen, what I will say is that as somebody who comes from political science, I respect the field, and I think that his keys are actually really useful. With that being said, though, I actually do think that he kind of delegitimized himself this election cycle by really showing his cards and like putting his 13 keys on some type of a weird pedestal, as if it's like he was saying. One thing that really bothered me was that before Kamala got into the race, or no, it was just after Kamala got into the race, he said that now, in order for her to win, Biden has to step down and she has to assume the presidency so she can get another key. When it's like, wait, hang on, you know that the keys are just like, it's probabilistic. Like, I don't understand why he's saying that. So I did not dismiss it outright.
He is nuts.
Yeah, I think that the methodology itself is sound, albeit outdated and subjective, right? I think that the way he fills in the keys is arguable. Like he says, he doesn't give Democrats the foreign policy key because he thinks Gaza is a disaster. That being said, though, I think that he needs to rein it in a little bit. I think he's gotten too cocky.
He for sure. I mean,
I think that the arguments on Twitter are very unbecoming of somebody who has a good record otherwise. He hasn't. He's kind of like fudged a little bit, right, when it comes to popular vote or electoral college. Like, what is it predicting? I get that, but nonetheless, I still think that the keys are useful, but they're not everything. It's not the end all be all. If you win the keys, it's not guaranteed you win the presidency. So I wish that he would rein it in, come back down to earth, drop the hubris bullshit, and just act normal. But I feel like he's kind of becoming a little bit Trumpian and a little bit of a Biden dead ender, or he was at least. And yeah, that's my thoughts. You feel free to share your thoughts on Professor Lichtman.
I mean, I told you my my thoughts on him.
You've been a better judge of character than me on people, so I would probably say you're right.
I don't know about his about how legit what he's saying is. What he's saying is, I should say, the actual data or whatever. But we've seen people like him before. Nate Silver's a great example of people who think very highly of themselves,
right,
and become so cocky and full of themselves that they make a mockery of what they do. And I think this guy has gone that route. If he was ever serious, I don't really know him too much, so I didn't know him. Unlike Nate Silver, I am not familiar with his work from before he went this route. So to me, he's just he's out.
That's your first impression, yeah. Yeah, and that's his fucking fault, because before Biden dropped out, he was saying, no, he can't drop out. Biden is going to win because he has the keys. And it's like, you have to stop. I don't like that he disregards polling as well. But I mean, like, look, there's so many of these predictors with great track records. There's the fucking cookie poll, where I don't know where the store's at, where you buy a cookie of each candidate, and they've apparently predicted, like, in this town where they sell cookies, the chat can help me out. They predicted every single presidency except for one. And this year, Trump won the cookie poll, but he won it last time and lost the election. So I guess the cookie poll is illegitimate. All I'm saying is that, like, nothing is
also a
set
cookie
in
poll.
stone.
A cookie poll makes no sense. People, if you live in an area where there's more Republicans, that person's just going to win the cookie poll because more people are going to buy that cookie.
Right.
Like, it's completely bullshit poll.
Can you buy 2 cookies? 3 cookies? I mean, what's the methodology here of the fucking cookie
like,
poll?
the idea anyone takes this stupid shit seriously, like, oh my God, it's insanity, man.
Yeah, it's Groundhog Day for, like, politicians.
Poll,
it's
a
like
fucking cookie poll.
Yeah, it's like horoscopes, like it's pseudoscience, right? Like, it's not grounded in any yeah. But thank you. I guess I kind of like unnuanced my take on Alan Lichtman. Well, maybe it's still nuanced, right? I think the keys are useful.
It's more nuanced than me.
yeah. He needs to chill though. CS Coolidge with $10. Thank you, CS. Way to go, CNN. Way to follow up defaming Rashida Tlaib. They're on a roll, aren't they? They really are on a roll. Michelle, $5 super chat, no message. Thank you so much. Chris Corcoran with $5. Appreciate that. I wish Walz was harder on Vance. I do too. But I feel normies will find Walz's respectfulness appealing. It's like how debates theoretically were before Trump. That's a great point, actually. I can see that. Zythone XV2 with $5. Thank you. I probably butchered your name, but nonetheless, appreciate the super chat. I think these debates should get rid of the time limits. Then JD would have had to explain and fail himself more. Yeah, that's true. It sounds great in theory. The problem is that they wouldn't be able to move on because they'd be stuck on one topic the whole time. But you could still have structure without strict time limits. So yeah, I'm open to changing the methodology a little bit.
We're here on hour 8 of the VP debate.
They're still talking about immigration.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's all the super chats we have.
Oh, is it? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Not a very lucrative night for me. Let me go home. I got some on Twitch. Let's see. Rock'em Wings. Thank you so much. Subscribe with Prime. And Robot Monkey Cat resubscribed for 24 months at tier 1. They've been subscribed for 35 months.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure JD Vance is either an android or an extraterrestrial in a human skin suit. Whatever the case, he has no concept of emotions and only has the one speaking mode. Yeah, he was very JD Vance tonight. I don't know what this is.
He was just... Yeah, he was that rehearsed politician, the thumb pointer, the phony. It was giving Hillary Clinton. He wasn't as bad as Ron DeSantis. I'll give him that. Nonetheless, still very fake and phony sounding, and I think that's going to be picked up on by regular viewers.
Right, but how about those Mets? That was my big story for the past 2 days. New York Mets. Oh my God.
Good or bad?
I'm not. No, good.
Okay. I'm not plugged into this world, so that's good. That's good.
Yeah. I'm not even a big baseball fan. I'm just a really big Mets fan.
Oh,
because
okay.
they're as close to like the hometown team as you can get. Like I can walk to City Field. Yeah, man. If you want to hear the story, if you're not familiar with baseball,
I played t-ball as a kid, so I used to be a pretty big star. I had my own baseball card and everything. So
yeah, so Mets and Diamondbacks and the Braves were all basically tied. 3 teams trying to get the last 2 wild card spots to get into the playoffs. And the Mets and the Braves had this game yesterday that was, oh my God, so good. Probably the best baseball game, or at least one of the best baseball games I've ever seen. And the Mets won, made it to the playoffs. And then today, they beat the Brewers. They got to just win one more and they move on to the next round. Oh my God, they're doing so good. I can't believe it. The Mets, baby. Last time they won the World Series was the year I was born. So
no kidding.
I'm calling it right now. Mets, the New York Mets 2024 World Series champs. Book it right now, baby. Book it right now.
Nice. We did get 2 more super chats in. We've got
you mean you got 2 more.
We've got $20. Thank you, Big Mac. What do you think about Michael Morris saying that Kamala Harris is just an employee of Joe Biden in his latest YouTube video? I'd have to see it. I'm not sure what he means by that. I'll check it out, though. I do appreciate Michael Moore's commentary. I think he's been more right than most people. So I'll reserve judgment because I don't know what he means by that. Sam Roker with $100 super chat. Thank you so much. That is extremely generous. I have no sound bites for you. Sorry about that, but thank you for the money. Thank you for sacrificing your country in the name of reality TV. You're welcome. I don't know if that's a compliment or a put down, but nonetheless, thank you for the $100. It's too late for me to be able to.
Somebody give me $100. What the hell?
It's like, well, I don't know. Oh, you know what? You have some super chats coming in, actually.
Oh, I do.
But yeah, I'm not really sure. Are you saying that like I'm perpetuating like a horse race reality TV like situation, or are you saying that American politics is very much like reality TV
Listen, if
and the
you
country?
if this person was criticizing how you're covering this, I don't think they would have sent you $100 fucking dollars.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Well, you know what? I appreciate it. It's a little bit. I'm tired, so my critical thinking skills are going to go down. So but I do appreciate it. Really,
I
really
think
appreciate
they
it.
are criticizing the debate and the whole campaign election as being reality TV and how you were
Okay.
doing a good job covering it.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's more of like a hey, our country is going down the tubes. It's like reality TV. It's more you like America in general.
It sounds a little bit like Alan Lichtman right now. Let's move on.
A little bit, a little bit. All right, here you go, Matt.
Oh, hell yeah. Tunbosin with a super chat. Post-debate news headlines. Tim Walz misspoke about being in Hong Kong 35 years ago. Tim Walz misspoke about being in Hong Kong 35 years ago. I actually know what you're saying. I don't, the mainstream media is obviously going to not take away the good things from what they should take away from this debate.
Mhm.
But I would be surprised if that was the takeaway. But, wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah. Also,
oh, thank you, Tokyo Hans. 5 memberships gifted. Thank you so much.
Another one.
Oh, Blood Card Beefy says Matt needs more super chat love. Thank you, Blood Card Beefy. I appreciate it.
And I got one from CS Coolidge again. Thank you, CS, for the $5. For those keeping score, my supers for Mike are for everyone. Oh, well, that's very nice. There you go, Matt. See?
Oh, so should I forward you my Venmo or something so you could?
I'll get right on that. Yeah, for sure. Tara, thank you so much, Tara, for the $5. Appreciate that. Do you think it was on purpose they chose 2 women to moderate? Possibly. It's possible. 2 VP candidates that are male, 2 women, balance it out, maybe. Hard to say for sure, though. It is CBS, so
CBS news director was like, "Yeah, we gotta get some broads in here."
Oh, it's a sausage fest on that stage.
But no, to take it seriously, I don't know. That's a good question. It might be just like maybe a seniority thing. I don't know who is even over at CBS. I swear they are like to me, like out of the news networks, they are. Oh boy, if I say this, maybe they'll come after my video of the debate. But they feel like out of all the news networks, they feel like the bottom rung, like the bottom tier, right? Don't they? They're not NBC. They're
They
not
are
ABC.
to me for sure because they copyright claim everything that we do whenever we cover their shit. So yeah, to me they're the bottom tier for sure.
I mean, it's so I got no idea, maybe what they're,
Yeah. Oh, we got another one in. Mr. P, $5. Thank you so much. There's an article from 2018 in our local paper that said a person has to make $108,000 a year to buy a house here, and the median income is $50K. Yeah, actually, I think that I'm not sure what it is nationally, but it's comparable. It depends on like what state. But yeah, that's about right. That's why people can't afford to buy homes anymore. And also the down payment is a huge part of it. But just in general, if the homes, on average are going for like $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, depending on where you live, you're not going to be able to afford that mortgage. That's insane. So yeah, bringing down the cost of housing is going to require more than like mass deportation, to the chagrin of JD Vance and Republicans, because they think that if you get rid of all the immigrants, everything's going to be copacetic. But little do they know, if they actually do that, they're going to want those immigrants back real quick, because immigrants contribute a lot to the economy. They pay taxes, but they don't get the benefits of citizenship. So if they want to, fuck around like that, they will find out. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to raid somebody on Twitch?
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Let's
yeah.
see. Wow. All right.
We've got.
I gotta say, usually around election season, I see crazy numbers.
Same.
I'm not seeing it this year.
Nope.
In
People
fact,
are
I'm seeing.
not
I'm not even
interested.
seeing. It's not even like I'm not even just seeing like normal numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Views are down across the board for me. I don't know if that's the same for you.
Views are average for me, which is not common for an election year. Usually election years are very good. We are political channels. This is when everybody tunes in. But yeah, either people aren't tuning in or the right wingers are sucking up all the oxygen. Oh, here we go. We got one for you from Kowalski.
Oh, thank you, Kowalski, with the heart emoji.
Very sweet.
John Doe says less money moving around. I'm not even talking about people putting their money in. I'm talking about super
Right, just
chats. I'm not talking about
views.
memberships. I'm talking about just people taking the time to watch my streams, watch videos. It is, and honestly, like it seems like that
Thank
way.
you, Kowalski.
If it from looking on the outside too, it felt that way to me for other channels as well. And it's good to hear Mike share a similar experience. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know what's going on, and maybe it's time to pack it in and retire from the politics channel.
Yeah. That'd be great for our mental health, probably. Although having the outlet is really nice, I will say.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to start my my New York Mets fan club YouTube channel.
There you go. Yeah, we'll just all go in different directions. Me and David will branch off into video games. You'll start your sports and wrestling channel. Rebecca will continue with her journalism that she's been doing. Shades of Good News. She'll do hers. And then Lance is going to continue with his comedy career. Veer into politics once in a while, but for the most part, be pretty apolitical. That's what's going to happen.
Oh wait, this isn't super chat, but Biva in the chat says, "Never forget that the right wing pivot can be lucrative." Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll start a little right wing channel. Maybe I'll kick off my. I'll get started on the script for my debut "Why I Left the Left" video.
It would be far more lucrative for me because I could be like, listen, as a homosexual, I can tell you that these anti-gay laws are not bigoted at all. And yes, you can disown your child for being gay and not be a bigot or a homophobe, okay? Like that, I would be a millionaire. Look at Dave fucking Rubin. Dude even got Russian money.
How I can see the headline for your first YouTube video now, actually. How this former Jimmy Dore fan came back to loving Jimmy Dore.
I don't think Jimmy Dore is going to put up any numbers, though. That dude is irrelevant as far as I've seen.
I mean, he's got, he might be irrelevant to the mainstream conversation, but you gotta believe this dude's still pulling numbers with his very niche audience. Like, let's check out his YouTube right now. I don't know if I don't know if the trajectory is up or down, but I'm gonna assume that he's still getting lots of views.
I would imagine he has over 1 million subscribers. He's got to be putting up some numbers. Yeah. But by the way, real quick, I got a super chat from Kowalski, $2. Take calls during the next debate. That would be amazing. We do need to figure out how to take calls. And you got a massive super chat, Matt.
Did I? What's that?
You did.
Where is it? Let's
right
Whoa! Here. SJ says with a $50 Canadian super chat, which means it's in Canadian money. Which means it's sent from the world, the land of Bret the Hitman Hart. I love it. Super Beefy said to show some love to wait. Oh, you spent all that money and messed up the super chat. Super Beefy said to some Matt some love. I think you mean Super Beefy said to show Matt some love. I appreciate it, SB. SJ. I really do.
We're getting Canadian money, right? I got $100 Canadian.
Yeah, it seems like the big spenders. Maybe all the money's in Canada. Maybe America's going broke, and can these Canadians have all the money now? Maybe
talking about Canadian politics.
Maybe I should. Maybe I just what's going on in Canada? What's my it's Trudeau, like the stock market. Trudeau up or down? Am I
he's
a
down.
fan of his today, or am I not a fan of his today?
Yeah, he's down right now. So yeah, he's on everybody's shit list. Oh, we just got another one here. Oxpecker, thank you for the $5. Can you all raid Shark 300? Yeah, let's do that. I'd love to raid Shark.
Let's raid. Let's find him.
I don't have a lot of viewers though, so it's kind of embarrassing. I just have 13
I don't either.
viewers.
I have a little bit more than that, I think. But I don't think he's. Oh no, there he is. He doesn't have many viewers right now. He doesn't have very many viewers right now. So
okay, so he'll appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah. But wait, is he on right now? It's just a blank. It's a screen with a screenshot, and I don't see him on there.
Yeah, he's on. It shows that he's live from me.
Okay, but is he there on this? Some people just leave their stream running and they're not there. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
All right, I'll take the. Oh, look what just happened. The copyright claim on my stream, the Leftist Mafia stream last week, got let go.
Oh, did you? Okay, I challenged mine too.
The Shane Gillis podcast with Theo Vaughn tried to claim the fucking Eric Adams PSA video that we played yesterday. Listen, I know how it is. It's an automated thing. But the fact that YouTube allows these guys, any of these copyright claim eligible people, to just fucking claim anything that they show on their show to begin with without actually having the rights to it, first off, is ludicrous. Because I guarantee you there's a whole bunch of people who don't realize, like we do, and lose out on whatever couple bucks that they could get. And it goes to these huge podcasts. And when you add up all the different YouTube channels they probably do this for, wouldn't surprise me if they're pulling thousands of dollars a month from unofficial, from wrong copyright claims.
Right. Which is why Shane Gillis needs to turn off automatic claims. We all have those turned off because we know that innocent people would get copyright claimed. If I play some clip from CNN, they might claim somebody else who plays the same clip. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. You have to turn it off.
It's very clear what should be done here. YouTube should have the automated thing that scans for this stuff, but then it shows a dashboard with all the stuff they scanned for. And you still have to go through and view it to see if it's actually, because listen, I get it. There's so many YouTube videos up there. How are legit copyright holders supposed to find all this stuff on their own? So there could be the system to scan for it, but it doesn't automatically claim the video. That still has to be manual because the company still has to actually view whether it's copyrighted material. Yeah.
Oh, I already
rated well, I will do it now. I will do it now. Hold on. I didn't mean to go off on this tangent.
I forgot that I
hit the raid button.
Yeah, and it just automatically did it after a while. He is on, by the way. His camera's off, but he's on and he's reading.
All right, cool. I'm going to hit that raid button right now. Thank you for tuning into the debate, everyone. And we'll see you on Leftist Mafia on Thursday.
We'll be right back.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, everybody. You take care. Have a good evening.